morning, this is Ryan from blazingwanderers.com, and today we're going to be doing our Webasto Airtop STC heater install. I've taken all the components out of the box, and it's a good idea just to make sure that you're not missing any components. Also, a really good video that I watched that I'm largely following is from Rich Built. If you get a chance, check that out. Basically, I'll be doing pretty much the same thing that he's done, with the exception that I also got a fuel standpipe. On the Ford Transit forum, there's some comments that, especially at high altitude, having some performance issues with getting gas with the existing access port that's on the fuel tank for the Ford Transit. It's a really big diameter hose that goes into the fuel tank. And so I'm going to be installing this after I drop down the fuel tank. Basically, this is the heater. I've painted the, this is a plate that you can buy, and I'll show you what I've done in the floor here. I highly recommend this so that you don't have to try to cut each one of these little screw penetrations and nozzles and the fuel standpipe coming out of this. This just has everything templated, and then you cut a rectangle. I also bought this off of eBay. So this is a directional outlet with a connector hose. This is a 2.5 inch hole saw for cutting that. In terms of the fuel pump, I highly recommend, as most people will say, of getting the all rubber connector as opposed to the metal one that's included, so you don't get the ticking sound inside the vehicle. I have seen in some kits that they have a fuel filter. I did not have one, so I got this off of eBay. It's just a Wix 1/4 inch barb paper fuel filter that will work with the 5mm fuel hoses. A little bit easier to get the 1/4 inch than the 5mm. I've also bought heat shielding for going up over the heat shield and the exhaust. This is the air inlet. Some zip ties that were included. I bought the controller as well as the rheostat, fuel line. These are the connectors, and I've already went ahead and put in the wiring into this conduit. I've also got some grommets. I'm using 7/8 inch grommets for my through floor penetration, and I'm going to put my wiring through the floor as opposed to up and over. I'll show you that. This is the exhaust, and I also bought a optional 10-foot extension. Fairly expensive. You can make your own, but these connectors are really the problem. I'm going to be putting my controller back into my van on the wall, and I needed the extra 10 feet to be able to do that. All right, so these are all the components. We're going to get started this morning. All right, so this is the hole that I've cut, and I've now painted. I put some rubberized coating underneath as well. One thing to look out for is this series of spot welds. Inside of these spot welds, about from here over, is hardened steel underneath, and going through that is almost impossible. I tried, and I wasn't able to make it, so I was able to go just inside of the serial number, and this is big enough. You can kind of see the opening back here. All right. And I'm going to be running my power. And here's the grommet I'll be using. I'll be running my power back into the van through the floor, and I'll be coming up right here, about 7.5 inches over from this pillar. There's a hole underneath. Come over here and show you. There was an existing hole and you can go up through this. This is just hollow here. You can go up through this into the van. So I plan to run my wiring down over here. It's the shortest run, and I'm already putting holes in the floor anyway. All right, so I've got the fuel tank dropped down. I didn't drop it down all the way, and the reason for that is so I can get it back underneath it and lift it up. But there's also a line here that's stretched pretty tight. I may have to disconnect that line in order to drop it down further if I need to be able to do so to get out the sending unit. In terms of the tank, if you decide to do this, make sure the tank is empty. The tank itself is not super heavy, but if you got 30 gallons of fuel, that's a couple hundred pounds. Make sure that you don't get your body in the line of fire. I used a jack to lower it down, make sure that it was all supported before undoing the supports, and then gently lowered it down. Okay, so this is the where you would normally, this little yellow port that you can see, this would be the easy way to go. The issue with this again is that there's a relatively large hose that's connected below that, and you have a tendency in high altitudes to lose prime. So I'm going to put the standpipe in. I'll be taking off this unit. You can see the attachments here, and then it swivels. You can see the little arrows to come out, and I want to do that because I'm going to put a new port in, probably about right there. I got to look around where the best place is, but I have to drill a 1-inch hole, and I don't want the shavings to get into the tank. So I will start taking this apart. All right, so not a lot of space here, but I want to show you how to take apart these connectors. So first of all, be careful. The fuel lines are under pressure, or can be under pressure. You've got this red, you've got the green, this other red, and you've got this electrical connection. To get the electrical connection separated, you push out on this, and then you push and you pull out. For these, you lift these tabs up on both sides. Again, wear some goggles, be careful, under pressure, pull out. This, use a pick. If you've got a trim kit, not I highly recommend it. This is a pick. You can go up underneath here, lift this up, and then you can pull this out. And this is the same as this one. You lift these tabs on both sides up, and you can push out, again, under pressure. And then there's connection here, or a bolt here, or nut here, and a nut here. And then I could rotate this and pull out the sender unit. And then I'll be putting, looks like right here, or right over here on one side here. I think I'll be right here is where I'll put the standpipe. All right, so I've got all 3 of the nuts off. Got the lines off right now. You can see the tab, how that's pulled up, and these are off. Okay, and then this will rotate. I should rotate off. All right, so I've got the center unit able to raise up now. This ring basically compresses this down into this O-ring. You can see the orange hose here that's under the auxiliary fuel port, that if you were to use this for the Webasto, supposedly this causes some issues in high altitude for staying primed. I'm hoping that the fuel standpipe that we're going to use is a solution and worth all this work to take this apart and get it back together again. All right, here's the sender unit, almost out. There's a level sensor down here, float, that I'll need to angle out in order to be able to take this out. All right, so one of the dilemmas for this particular standpipe is the size. There's basically here, this is the rubber washer that has to fit on top. here, or I can cut out where this auxiliary fuel port is and basically remove this hose and come down. So the consideration here is two things. One is being able to get that gasket, and two, this is the standpipe. Now for this is what will be above, and then I'll have to cut and trim this. This is for a much bigger tank and you can bend it, but it'll be somewhere about right there where I'll cut it. So it'll be just a straight shot. And the question is then, because I also have to be able to get this in. So I can go down this hole here. And I think because there's a big plug here, and I think that'll interfere here for the size of this. Here, if I go right there, I've got the fuel pump underneath. At least I think that is. Yeah, I think that's the pump. And then if I cut this out, I lose my auxiliary fuel port, but hey, I got it here anyway. And so I can just then take off this tube and then go straight down to either here or even further if I can hit that hole. Problem with going just here is that, once the tank is that empty, then you'll lose prime. So I prefer to be able to get down further. All right, so I've cut off the end of the pipe, standpipe, just to check, and so I can get pretty much all the way down. I may, the way this is, I may have to put just a little bit of a bend in order to hit that hole to here. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to double check, but this should be 12 millimeter, which is 1 inch. I'm going to, I'm just going to drill this out. All right, well, I have a little bit of a mess up here. I'm going to show you where. So I've cut off where this nozzle is, but the issue is the interference here. And I can cut the gasket back a little bit, but I'm also going to have to cut back this metal washer a little bit. So what I've done is I've moved the hole over just a bit. I'll have just a little bit of metal trimming to do, and then I've checked, I'll have plenty of gasket, but yeah, even this right here is not a great solution. Maybe testing this again might have been the better route, but I'm committed now, so time to make it work. All right, I almost made a huge mistake. I'll walk you through this. Sometimes sharing those mistakes are helpful. So I've got the unit where I'm ready to put it back into the fuel tank. This has been about an hour and a half or so later, and you can see the way that the fuel standpipe is coming out. This is where the location of the ring on top of the tank will be. Okay, and then there's a metal ring here. I've got this tape here just to remind me which side is which. Take that out, and now you see what I've had to do. So I definitely would not recommend putting this here where the factory fuel offtake port is. Maybe here's a better spot. You really have to check and see. Here was the issue. I've taken out the tank pressure relief so you can see, but there's a bracket here that holds that, just in case the fuel, the tank starts to overpressure. There's a valve there that allows that to release, and there's just not a lot of space there for the Webasto fuel standpipe because it needs, if you go up from underneath, probably 8 to 9 millimeters. If you go from the top, you'd need a ½ an inch. But you can see I've had to basically manually drill out a hole here, and then I've had to flatten this out here. I've had to cut out a little bit of the plastic to make this happen. I've had to cut out the support rib here for the piece of plastic for this port, and I've had to round this so that this ring gets back on. And in addition, let me get this right here. Here we go. So you can see where this has to go. Otherwise, you then have to cut this, which I did not want to do. So really, if you're doing this, pay close attention to all the dimensions and tolerances, both above and below on what's there. Maybe consider that part, but measure at your own risk. I feel comfortable where I'm at now, but man, a lot of work. Getting much further along in the install now. What I've used is this heat resistant shielding. I've cut both the fuel line as well as my electrical for the fuel pump with a little bit of extra length to run across. And I've got this heat shielding on top of the conduit just for extra protection as it goes across. You can see the fuel filter with the fuel pump with this flexible conduit down to here, and then you can see how it's connected. I went ahead and used about that's somewhere between a foot and a half of flexible line. I want to be able to drop the tank and not put too much stress on this connection. One of the things that I learned here was that this line for filling the tank, it's really hard to drop it all the way down. So supporting it with a little bit of thickness is a good thing. Otherwise, you put a lot of stress on this hose. So next, we're gonna run this up and over. Hard to see it now, but there's a channel up in there that you can run things across up over the heat shielding for the muffler. So this is the heater installed. I've elected to run the wiring here through the floor, through this rubber grommet. You can see right here on the edge how I've caulked the sides. I have an access plate that you can see in one of the earlier videos that came with the unit. I've used this heater hose that I've got off of Amazon, and then this will be, I also got this off of Amazon, so this helps blow the floor, the air parallel to the floor, as opposed to if you just have the regular straight, it would be blowing it down at the floor. So this kind of directs it back up a bit. So this is the exhaust. I've used some of the heat shielding here inside of this metal bracket, and then I've used HVAC tape to really kind of lock this in position and secure it. The air intake is here. The fuel line and the power to the and control signal to the fuel pump goes through here, and then heat shielded, and then underneath again it's Rich Built has a really nice how-to that I used for this install, but then I've run my power wiring for the heater through here, and then I have it brought up through the side and up on the inside of the van. So it goes through the sidewall and then up, and I'll show you how that's routed. And so then it comes up right here, and then I plan on having a fuse panel located back here behind the wall. In a minute, I will go around and show the fuel pump and fuel filter that I've installed. So there's the fuel line with the all rubber clamp that helps to really cut down on the vibration per all the reviews from folks. And then you can see the Wix fuel filter. It's a 1/4 inch line versus 5mm line, but it takes a little bit of extra force to get the 5mm ID fuel lines over the 1/4 inch nozzles for the fuel filter, but I was able to make it work. All right, that is the install.